But in the chaos of the post-war world, this simple act of kindness became a symbol of change. This was the beginning of a story in which thousands of German women found love and a new life with American soldiers. The story of why German brides married former enemies in such great numbers became an unexpected chapter of the post-war era, a chapter of love, cultural contrasts, and the search for their own version of the American dream. After the collapse of Nazi Germany, life for its people changed beyond recognition. The world they had known was gone, but on its ruins grew the seeds of a new beginning. Daily life was harsh. Many cities lay in rubble. Infrastructure was destroyed. Homes and businesses reduced to piles of bricks. Ordinary people struggled just to survive. Food, fuel, and clothing were in short supply. Long lines formed at bakeries, and the black market thrived, where cigarettes, chocolate, and other goods from Allied rations were prized. German women, from teenage girls to mothers of families, faced dramatic change. Millions were left without husbands. Some had been killed at the front, others were still in POW camps, and many who returned came home disabled, unable to provide for their families. Historians estimate that right after the war, there were several million more women than men in Germany. Under these conditions, the traditional model of life, marriage, children, and running a household, became almost unattainable for an entire generation of women. It seemed as if fate itself was pushing them to search for a new path and rethink their future. At the same time, post-war German society was in a state of moral collapse. Old values had been shaken. The church, the family, and long-held social norms all were in question. Many women, scarred by bombings and years of dictatorship, felt lost and lonely. Yet the post-war period was not only about grief, it also carried hope for a fresh start. The destroyed world opened the door to re-examining old traditions and trying something new. The harsh discipline of wartime life slowly gave way to a desire for personal happiness and peace in one's own life. And that was when American soldiers appeared on German streets. To German women of the time, Americans had a special image. Soldiers of the U.S. Army, yesterday's enemies, now patrolled German cities, handing out candy and chewing gum to children, talking with locals in broken German, or simply through a smile, the universal language of goodwill. For women exhausted by war, Americans seemed like men from another world. They were open, friendly, quick to laugh and joke, strikingly different from the stern and reserved manner of German men at home. An American I might wink at a child and hand him a candy bar, strike up a casual conversation on the street, or help an elderly woman carry a heavy suitcase. Such small gestures of kindness touched hearts. For many German women, that chocolate bar or pack of cigarettes wasn't just a treat. It was a sign of attention, respect, and safety in the midst of chaos. German women also noticed how much easier Americans were in conversation. GIs addressed them politely and casually, weren't afraid to start a chat, gave compliments, laughed. In short, they acted in a more relaxed and democratic way than German men of that generation. Their uniforms looked sharp, they appeared healthy and strong, and they were well supplied. Their rations, canned meat, chocolate, coffee, stood in stark contrast to the meager portions German families had to live on. There was even a joking nickname. Young German women seen with American soldiers were called chocolate girls, since they were often spotted holding the rare treat given to them by their American suitors. American culture began to seep into daily life in occupied Germany as well. Alongside the soldiers came jazz and swing music, which sounded lively and free compared to the marching songs of wartime. At officers' clubs, Germans heard new rhythms, and at dances, GIs taught German girls how to laugh and swing to the boogie-woogie instead of the traditional waltz. Americans dressed differently too. Their uniforms and casual clothes looked more comfortable and modern than pre-war German fashion. Jeeps and Dodges rolled through the streets, and some officers even had personal cars, a sight that amazed locals who mostly relied on beat-up bicycles or horse carts. No wonder many Germans said the Americans looked like they had stepped right off a movie screen. Soldiers from the future. Most striking of all was the way Americans treated women. In pre-war German culture, the traditional family model was deeply...
On December 17, 1944, during the Battle of the Bulge, one of World War II's darkest war crimes, unfolded near the Belgian town of Malmedy. That morning, about 120 American soldiers from the 285th Field Artillery Observation Battalion were captured by Waffen-SS troops, the military wing of the Nazi SS. They were disarmed and expected to be marched to a POW camp. Instead, they were corralled into a snowy field by troops of the 1st SS Panzer Division under the command of Joachim Peiper. Without warning, the German soldiers opened fire with machine guns. The massacre was brutal. Some Americans were cut down immediately. Others tried to flee across the snow, but SS troops hunted them down, shooting the wounded and finishing off anyone who moved. By the end, 84 American POWs were dead. A handful managed to survive by playing dead under the bodies of their comrades.
It was for official business. Of course, such orders clashed with human nature. The war was over, and many young Americans, weary of bloodshed and tension, longed for simple human connection. By the fall of 1945, the strict fraternization ban was being quietly ignored, and soon it was lifted altogether. GIs began freely visiting city cafes, organizing dances, and getting to know the locals. Naturally, romance began to bloom between young men and women. Even so, another obstacle remained at the official level: a ban on marriages to citizens of former enemy nations. For an American GI to marry a German woman in 1945 to 46 was almost impossible. The Army wouldn't grant permission, and without that approval, the marriage wasn't recognized. Paperwork stalled, and the woman he loved couldn't join him in the United States. Many couples kept seeing each other in secret, hoping the rules would change. Love, as the saying goes, knows no borders, and in this case, feeling proved stronger than politics. Stories from that time are full of clandestine meetings among the ruins, letters passed hand to hand, tearful farewells, and hope for a quick reunion. Pressure from the soldiers in love, and over time shifting public sentiment back home, gradually did its work. Officials realized they couldn't ignore the hearts of thousands. By 1946, the restrictions began to ease. In late 1946, U.S. military authorities officially lifted the ban on marriages to German citizens. That decision was a turning point. At last, there was a legal path to unite the lives of people brought together by the war. A broader policy change soon followed. Washington recognized it needed to address the status of these foreign women who would become the wives of American servicemen. In the spring of 1947, the United States adopted a special law known as the War Brides Act. The law formally opened the way for American servicemen to marry foreign nationals and allowed those wives to enter the U.S. outside the strict immigration quotas of the time. In plain terms, the U.S. government said, "If our serviceman married abroad, we will welcome his spouse as one of our own." The act removed the final legal barriers for thousands of love stories born amid the ruins of Europe and Asia during and after the war. With the hurdles cleared and papers signed, a new test awaited a German woman who chose to marry an American. A long journey across the ocean to an unknown America. For many, the thought of leaving home was both frightening and exhilarating. In the late 1940s, special passages were organized for war brides, usually by sea, since air travel wasn't yet widespread. Real bride ships sailed from European ports to the United States, carrying hundreds of young women and often their small children. One of the earliest famous crossings was the ocean liner SS Argentina, a former troop ship refitted for peacetime. In January 1946, it sailed from Southampton, England, with about 450 war brides, mostly British on that voyage, and nearly 200 children born to Allied servicemen. 9 days later, they reached New York. It was only the beginning. Soon, such sailings became routine. Newspapers affectionately dubbed them ships of love. They weren't bringing soldiers to war, but wives to new families and a peaceful life. It's easy to imagine the swirl of emotions on the open Atlantic. On deck stood young women who had lived under the thunder of bombs only yesterday. Now they stared at the endless ocean and dreamed of a future in a faraway land. In their eyes were tears at leaving home and joy at soon seeing the men they loved, fear of the unknown and hope for something better. The scale of the war bride phenomenon astonished even contemporaries. Tens of thousands of women around the world married American servicemen in those years. From defeated Germany alone, post-war figures suggest roughly 50,000 German women became the wives of U.S. soldiers. From the United Kingdom came even more, on the order of 70,000 to 80,000 British women tied their lives to Americans. No wonder the first SS Argentina crossing carried mostly English brides. Italy accounted for about 15,000 brides, Japan more than 45,000. There were Australians, French women, Dutch and Belgian women, Filipinas, essentially from everywhere U.S. forces had been stationed. In total, the number ran into the hundreds of thousands of families formed between American servicemen and foreign women. It's commonly estimated that in the immediate post-World War II period alone, more than 100,000 war brides resettled in the United States. America became home not only to returning servicemen, but to their new international families. Each of those families was the fulfillment of a small dream of a better life, shared by people worn down by war. Of course, crossing an ocean was only the beginning for German wives of American servicemen. Years of adaptation lay ahead in their new country. The first steps were often the hardest. Picture it. A young woman from a different language and culture finds herself in bustling New York or in a small town in Iowa. All around her are unfamiliar words, customs, even foods and street smells unlike anything at home. Many German wives felt like outsiders at first, which of course they were. They had to learn English from scratch, often getting by with gestures and scattered phrases. Thankfully, love helped them over the hurdles. Their husbands and new families generally tried to support them and make the transition easier. Yes, there were mix-ups and funny mistakes. Someone would confuse English words, someone else wouldn't understand American slang. In post-war America, little things could feel strange to European wives. The taste of the food or neighbors smiling at strangers on the street, not a common habit in Germany at the time. They learned that when people asked, "How are you?" they didn't expect a detailed life story. Step by step, the war brides found their footing. Many of the women recalled that overall, their new American surroundings were friendly and curious about them. Neighbors would ask questions about faraway Germany and what life was like over there in Europe. At times, though, there was misunderstanding. Not every American woman, especially younger ones, was thrilled by the idea that hometown boys had come back from overseas with foreign wives. Some war brides at first felt a bit of coldness from local women who thought they stole our men. But those feelings usually faded once people got to know each other better. By the late 1940s, communities of war brides had sprung up all across the United States. Women of different nationalities built friendships, helped one another keep their languages and traditions alive, and at the same time became part of American life. In time, most German wives built lasting lives in the United States. They gained citizenship. American law allowed it after several years of residency, and raised children. Those children, born of German mothers and American fathers, grew up as Americans, often speaking little or no German, but always aware of their international roots. These families became a living symbol of former enemies becoming one. What diplomats struggled to achieve through treaties happened in these households on a personal level. A German mother would sing her baby a lullaby in English, while the American father read a bedtime story. On the wall hung family photos, some from a Bavarian village, others from a farm in rural America. Only a few years earlier, these families had been divided by hatred of war. Now, they were one. Some German war brides later left behind memoirs and letters describing those years. A common theme runs through them: the pain of leaving home, but no regrets, because love had justified the step. "I left Germany, but I found love and a new homeland," one woman wrote decades later. That sentence captures the essence of thousands of lives reshaped by a single decision. Yes, they had to adapt, learning to cook with unfamiliar foods, celebrating different holidays, figuring out American humor. But many testified that their American husbands were kind and loving, and that was what truly mattered. Over time, German wives became an integral part of American communities, whether on a farm in the Midwest or in a neighborhood of a big city. They joined local churches, worked jobs, or volunteered, and swapped European recipes with neighbors. And though they sometimes felt pangs of homesickness for Germany, most came to see America as home, the place where they had found family, respect, and freedom to be themselves. It's important to stress, the phenomenon of German women marrying American soldiers was not about calculation or chasing wealth, as cynics might suggest. Yes, the United States of the late 1940s looked like a land of plenty compared to ruined Europe, and stability in a prosperous country was attractive. But few would have left their homeland and culture forever for comfort alone. The true driving force was love, and the qualities German women admired in their American husbands. As mentioned before, what drew them wasn't material abundance, but character, respect for women and their opinions, ease in conversation, optimism, humor. These traits won hearts more strongly than full store shelves or pretty clothes. In post-war Germany, women had endured grief and a lack of freedom. With American husbands, many felt valued and cherished. The cultural contrast mattered deeply. The German sense of steadiness and resilience paired with America's openness and belief in personal happiness.
On December 17, 1944, during the Battle of the Bulge, one of World War II's darkest war crimes unfolded near the Belgian town of Malmedy. That morning, about 120 American soldiers from the 285th Field Artillery Observation Battalion were captured by Waffen-SS troops, the military wing of the Nazi SS. They were disarmed and expected to be marched to a POW camp. Instead, they were corralled into a snowy field by troops of the 1st SS Panzer Division under the command of Joachim Peiper. Without warning, the German soldiers opened fire with machine guns. The massacre was brutal. Some Americans were cut down immediately. Others tried to flee across the snow, but SS troops hunted them down, shooting the wounded and finishing off anyone who moved. By the end, 84 American POWs were dead. A handful managed to survive by playing dead under the bodies of their comrades.